feel great to be in Nome. It feels a little bit surreal to be done with the race. I keep waking up from my naps and thinking I'm like still on the trail in a checkpoint, wondering like what position I'm in and what time I want to leave and what the dogs need to be eating. So I'm still kind of has not quite sunk in yet that it's over, but yeah, I feel great to be here. There's Kobuk and Moose, Oyvind, Fitzurk I dropped in safety about 22 miles from the finish line. There's Yentna and Lynx and Knox. I drove a pretty big string all the way to the river, so about the halfway point, and then started dropping dogs pretty consistently starting in like Grayling, I think it was. Most of the reasons that the dogs got dropped was for shoulders, sore shoulders. And I think that probably I had a couple runs there around Iditarod that maybe were a little bit fast. The dogs looked really good at the time in those runs, but I think the speed maybe caught up with them in the end, and some sorenesses started popping up. Nothing crazy major. I'm sure by the time I get home, everyone's going to be looking 100%, but that's most of the reason for the drop dogs. Knox was my MVP for sure. I had a lot of very good dogs on the team, and I had some really good leaders, but those last couple 100 miles were tough. And this guy never showed that he was tired or discouraged or had any doubts about the fact that we were gonna get to know. He was a leader in every sense of the word. And I would not be here if not for him. I almost didn't take him. He is almost 8 years old, and he's by far our biggest dog. And those, in my mind, those were points against him coming into this race. But I had some other dogs that at the last minute didn't make it, a couple leaders, and I thought, okay, I really need to bring another strong leader, and Knox was an obvious choice, and thank God I had him, because I honestly do not know that we would be here if not for him. So he was the heart of the team there at the end. I have never run a race competitively, and I truly did not know like what these dogs are capable of. You think you know until you are running 1,000 miles in 10 days, and your team's getting small at the end, and the trail is soft, and the trail is windy, and the trail is warm, and the trail has a bunch of vertical elevation gain, and the trail is icy, and just all of these adverse trail conditions for the last 200 miles. I did not realize truly what they're capable of. They are just the most incredible endurance athletes on the planet, and that was pretty amazing to see. I have to give a lot of accolades to this guy here, Fitzurk. Can you look at the camera? Fitzurk surprised the heck out of me, leaving White Mountain. The team was perfectly happy to stand up and get going, but no one really wanted to lead. Knox wanted to lead, but he was doing this thing where he couldn't decide what trail to be on. There were a ton of snow machine tracks side by side, and he wanted to try all of them. And so the team was doing this, and I knew it was going to be a 70-mile run to the finish line. And I was like, oh, Knox, we cannot be wasting energy. Fitzurk, come here. We cannot be wasting energy making these S corners. And so I had to find different dogs to put up there and lead. And I ended up with Fitzerk up there, first with Yentna, and then eventually with Knox once we got out of that super wide trail. And Fitzerk is one of those dogs that can't lead very often. He gets kind of burned out on it, but once in a while you put him up there, and I mean, he just drives and he loves it, and he's super focused and super positive, and that was just exactly what we needed on that last run. So he really surprised me. My first deviation from my race plan was on the way to Rainy Pass. I had not anticipated or not planned to stop in Rainy Pass. I had expected or wanted to go beyond the checkpoint because it's a really loud checkpoint. It has a ton of private airplane traffic, and you're right in the mountains, you're on this lake, and it's just this like natural amphitheater as planes come in and out of there. It's the middle of the day. It was super loud and busy. I did not want to stay, but I had a broken sled, and my dog team really wanted to park. They love checkpoints, so we get in there and they want to park, and my sled's kind of broken, and you know, they sort of forced me into like, okay, we got to make a stop here, which was good. I'm really glad we did because it was hot, and later when I left the checkpoint, I realized how wide open and exposed we would have been in that afternoon sun going up to the pass. I didn't remember it being quite so wide open with no shade. And so eventually I was like very happy that I deviated from my race plan there. At the time I was a little bit, you know, stressed out about it, but I think I pulled it around pretty quick, and I came up with an alternative that ended up being fine. But yeah, in the moment I was not so happy to be already deviating from my race plan at only like mile 150 or whatever that was. I tried really hard to not have expectations coming into this race. That's advice that I've gotten over and over, most notably from my friend and champion Brent Sass. No expectations. I think I did a pretty good job of not expecting anything. Maybe that's a boring answer, but I had no expectations. I am tougher than I thought I was. If you had told me in the beginning what those last couple 100 miles were going to be like, I don't think that I wouldn't have thought I could do that. I'm physically tougher than I thought I was. I'm mentally tougher than I thought I was. I was pretty good at getting myself out of bad headspaces. I was able to do that a bit faster than I thought I could. I got into Elam pretty upset about the wind that I had experienced between Koyuk and Elam, and you know, saw that my team was getting tired and they were facing adversities out there, and I definitely had a moment of not being sure that, you know, I was going to be able to keep it together and we were going to be able to keep it together, but within a matter of an hour or two, I, you know, turned it around, shook it off, and we left, and here we are. So yeah, definitely tougher than I gave myself credit for. The moment that stands out to me in my mind as being a sort of like aha moment of real achievement, is when we got to the very last of the Topcock hills, because they kind of just go on forever. There as you're leaving White Mountain, it's flat for a while, and then you start climbing, and it's just hill after hill after hill, and each one is bigger than the one before it. And we got to the top of that very last hill, and the Bering Sea is like right there in front of you, laid out, and you know, you just feel like it's downhill all the way to Nome. And it's not necessarily, there's still plenty of challenges in those last 30 miles or whatever it is. But that was just such a proud and happy moment for me. And that was, you know, the furthest that I had gone then unassisted, right? Because last year we got help, you know, a mile or two before that very last hill. So getting to the top of that very last Topcock hill was like, okay, now I am in a place on this race that I have not been before without assistance. So that was a really powerful moment. I think I already talked a little bit about being in Elam and that being a low point for me. I don't know how I got through that other than I got some good advice from my husband and from the race judge there, just reminding me that I had done this before. I could do this. Other people in front of me were doing it. It's always helpful to look at that tracker and see that your cohort is making it through those tough sections. Made me feel like I could do it. I also had a playlist of my favorite musical artist, Noah Kahan. I'm not sure how he says his last name. But I had a specific playlist that was just his like tracks that are my favorite, that I put on before going through the gorge. Really like get myself pumped up for going through that tricky section, feeling like a rock star. He's got a lot of really upbeat music about self-confidence and tackling your fears and challenges. I had a few runs out there that were pretty special for one reason or another. I think the one that will stand out to me, in addition to, you know, getting to the last of the Topcock Hills, which we talked about already, going through Rainy Pass was pretty awesome. That's right before the gorge. And I was climbing up to Rainy Pass at sunset. So I got to see this beautiful sunset and the light shining on all the mountains up there, pink and orange and purple. And then right as the sun was going down, the full moon was coming up behind the mountains. And so my run through the gorge was by moonlight mostly. And you're in this kind of canyon. And so these mountains over here on my left were fully illuminated, super bright. And then these mountains over here on my right were in a moon shadow, really dark. And it's cool. It kind of made me think about the two sides of mushing. As well as that run through the gorge, you really get to experience the two sides of mushing, which is like the beauty and the awe and the wonder and the being by yourself with your dogs and the wilderness and the elements and like being part of the landscape. It's just so magical and beautiful, and I was getting real emotional out there thinking about it. But then the dark side of mushing is like, okay, the gorge is like one of the most dangerous sections of trail where you can hurt yourself and you can hurt your sled and you can hurt your dogs, and it is scary as hell. And so the scenery and the moonlight in that moment really was illuminating for me, the two sides of the gorge and then also the two sides of mushing. What that question brings up for me is leaving Elam, which is really interesting because I was quite nervous to leave Elam. I knew that I was going into a storm, but yet when I left, you drop right out onto the sea ice and there was all this jumble ice around me, and all the peaks of the ice were crystal clear and glassy, and it was windy. And so there's all this snow that's blowing around really like close to the ground level, is blowing around these glassy jumble ice peaks, and the trail has us carving through the jumble ice. And it was so beautiful. And yet I was just still pretty nervous because the wind's getting stronger and stronger, and I know I'm headed into a pretty serious storm on that run to White Mountain. But there's something about going through bad weather that just connects you and grounds you to the topography and to the terrain unlike anything else. You know, when the weather is nice, you can sort of get above yourself and look down on yourself in this bird's eye view, and it's all beautiful and lovely. But when that weather is hard and that trail is scary and technical, I mean, you're in it, and it really makes you feel connected to everything that's going on around you with the trail and with the weather conditions. It was really awesome to run around Aaron Peck and Jesse Royer, who have so many combined Iditarod runs between them. They usually are competing at a pretty high level, and I never have before, and so it was just really awesome to be around them and ask them things like, you know, is this normal? Is this what this should look like? You know, how is your team performing? How is your team eating? What are your run speeds like? And to have their insight and their knowledge and their encouragement was just so valuable and really wonderful and comforting. I think that when the camera is on me, when y'all are seeing me, I'm in a checkpoint, and there's something so awesome and comforting about being in the checkpoint, because it's safe. You know, you can have gone through something absolutely hellacious that you thought you'd never come out in one piece, but somehow you do. And so when I get to the checkpoint, I'm usually just in such a good mood because I'm just so happy to be there and be safe and my dog's safe and have us all together. Even if I have something like a broken sled or a broken gang line or, you know, a dog with some kind of orthopedic issue, I learned on this race that it's all surmountable. It's all survivable. And so I think typically, you know, when you're seeing me on camera and I'm so happy, a lot of that is just like relief to be safe and sound and in one piece. On the trail, I am, you know, if you were to stop me at any given moment, there's probably a lot more moments of panic and distress than what you get to see in the checkpoints. If you had asked me at any point on the trail, am I going to do this again? I would have been like, absolutely not. But then pretty much as soon as I got to the finish line, I was like, oh, I'll for sure do this again. As for next year, I'm really excited to see what Jeff can do with this team. He's a very good musher. If I was able to take this young group who's just getting into their prime and get 16th on my second Iditarod, no pressure, but I think Jeff's going to have a hell of a team next year. So I'm very, very excited to see what he's going to do.